Hello, dear friends. Today we decided to hold a mini conference with a researcher of anomalous phenomena, ufologist, and physicist whose name is Maxim. He will be asking questions to the representative of Burkhard Raumtian, who is a specialist in energetic interactions with the environment, and I will be answering those questions. He will tell me, I will answer.
From the bottom of my heart, I greet Raumtian, a representative of the Burkhard civilization from the Cygnus constellation. While communicating with representatives of various extraterrestrial forces, I have occasionally heard about your strong creative civilization, but have never crossed paths with you until now. I know that you are one of the main curators of the Earth, and were directly involved in the elimination of radiation contamination in Chernobyl in the 80s of the last century. It is a pleasure to communicate with you.
Please ask questions.
So Raumtian is here, I take it?
Yes.
First question. Today I would like to raise the topic of magnetic fields. I would like to hear your definition of magnetic field and magnetic interactions in general from the point of view of your civilization.
What you call magnetic field, in our terminology, is called one of the types of energy of the first level embedded in the atoms of any substance. It is generated by each particle, can exist in the atom itself, and can go beyond it into space. Any atom of any substance in our terminology is a carrier of magnetic field, electricity, and other types of energies of all three levels. The characteristics of these atoms differ depending on the kind of element. The difference between atoms is generated by the amount of different kinds of energy and the speed of their vibrations, what you call vibrations in this or that substance. And so they are made up of the same energies, just in different amounts and at different rates of vibrations. These are first-level energies. The nature of magnetic field is one of the types of material energy. There are several kinds of them in total, from the position of our science: heat energy, electricity, magnetism, radio waves, light. All these are energies of the first level embedded in atoms, which are either in atoms themselves, as it happens with heat, and then you call it a simple vibration of atoms and molecules, or go beyond atoms, and then you call it electromagnetic vibrations, radio waves, or light, depending on the spectrum of frequency of vibrations. You have it tied to measuring devices, to the ability of your body receptors to perceive these or those vibrations. If you look at what happens in space when magnetic field appears, when this kind of energy leaves the substance, it looks like a whirlwind, a funnel that spins, and it's voluminous, like a whirlpool in water. Any celestial body, be it a planet, a star, or even a small, from your point of view, asteroid, has its own magnetic field, which is formed by the interaction of those particles of matter which are contained either in the planet's atmosphere in its presence, or in its interaction of those particles of energy, light, photons, and other energies, which come from the star, if we speak about celestial bodies which do not have their own thermonuclear radiation, that is about planets, their satellites, and asteroids. The magnetic field of any star is formed by a slightly different method, because when emitting energy from it of the second level, what you call thermonuclear energy, the energies from the substances forming the star, which you call electromagnetism, will necessarily come out, i.e. there will be light, magnetic field, electricity, and everything else that you fix.
So stars have a slightly different process for forming magnetic fields?
Yes, because thermonuclear reactions occur in them.
Is it a little different for gas or ice giant planets?
Gas giants are those planets in the solar system whose atmospheres are made up mostly of hydrogen and helium, right?
Yeah, like Jupiter, for example.
The process of magnetic field formation on planets of this type, in general, does not differ from the process of magnetic field formation on other planets, with the only difference that from high pressure of gases closer to the planet's surface, the temperature of gas can grow, and from this can begin to form magnetic fields according to the same laws as in stars. But all this will be on a very reduced scale, because there are no thermonuclear reactions of their own there anyway. There will only be its beginning, but the planets of gas giants simply do not have enough mass of matter or temperature to start a thermonuclear reaction, although there may be some preconditions for it.
So it turns out that the formation of the magnetic field is closer to planets that are more material, like Earth, right?
Yes, what you call the solar wind. These are particles of energy, which from your star spread in space, They reach not only to the Earth or to Mars, they go far beyond the solar system, and they lose almost no energy. And they come from the atmospheres of the planets you named, even though they are far away from the luminary. Therefore, these particles interact with particles of gases, with atoms of gases, which make up these planets. They create their own magnetic fields, just like on other planets. And very small planets have elementary, even weak atmospheres. The magnetic field of a galaxy is the sum of the magnetic fields of all of its largest stars. If we look from the outside, from another galaxy, we cannot measure the magnetic field of every star or planet. We will only pick up the magnetic radiation of the largest stars and the center of the galaxy, what we call the energy center of the galaxy. This forms the magnetic field around it. Each galaxy, as a collection of stars and planets, has its own magnetic field, which includes as segments the magnetic fields of the objects I have named. In atoms of some substances, we call it energies of the first level, magnetism, can spontaneously leave these atoms and influenced by this exit on energies of the third level. We call it microgravity, and you call it internal nuclear forces that hold atoms and molecules in their places and give density to matter. Magnetic field, if it came out of atoms, can affect the microgravity of other elements. And due to this, there is an effect of attraction of this substance in which microgravity has changed to the substance that emitted the magnetic field. In our science, it is accepted to divide all energies of material world on 3 levels. All of them are connected with each other and interact with each other. The energies of the first level are heat, light, electromagnetism, radio waves. The energies of the second level are what you call radioactive radiation, hard X-rays, and fusion energy, that which is released when atoms of different elements collide with each other at high speed and high pressure. The energy of the third level is what you call gravity. We divide it into 2 types. Microgravity, that which allows objects that you see and can feel their structure and density through your skin receptors, allow to not be gas and in a more diffuse state. What attracts both atoms to each other and allows molecules to build up in certain systems. Every substance has a molecular lattice, which is the structure of matter that is built according to its own laws and individual to each substance. Macrogravity is what allows the laws of kinematics, mechanics, dynamics to manifest in your world. This is all that you call the force of motion, attraction, centrifugal force. This is the manifestation of macrogravity. It allows all planets, stars, galaxies, and the smallest speck of dust in the universe to have their own speed of motion, trajectory, orbit, not to fly apart in chaos, but to move according to certain laws. All magnetic fields of any material object, as well as gravitational fields and electric fields, are really connected with each other for the reason that if atoms generate a magnetic field, it causes changes in all surrounding atoms. It may give rise to another magnetic field, or conversely, retard its manifestation, remove it. In our model of the universe, everything affects everything.
So the galaxy's magnetic field is connected with the magnetic field of the magnets on some planet. Magnetic fluxes overlap.
Magnetic field of a galaxy includes as segments the magnetic fields of absolutely all stars and planets in this galaxy. Magnetic field of a planet includes segments of magnetic field of smaller objects located on it. The speed of the magnetic flux depends very much on the surrounding energies, on the substance that generated the magnetic field. But our scientists know that energy flows of the same level have the same speed. The streams of energy expiration from the substance of one level have the same speed. That is why our scientists managed to discover that the energy, which is on the third level, called gravitation, and whose carrier is the graviton, when released from the substance in which it is contained, has a much higher speed than the energy of the first level, magnetism, light, radio waves. It is on this principle that our engines are based, on which we can travel throughout the galaxy within a few tens of minutes.
So the speed depends on the level of energy that is being shared.
Yes, the deeper in an atom a particular energy is embedded, the greater the speed of vibrations it will have when released from it. In our science, there is no concept of magnetic induction. There is a concept of magnetic field.
When a magnet passes through a conductor, an electric current is formed in it. Do you use such devices?
In our terminology, it is not called induction. It is the energy of one kind of energy of the first level, magnetic energy, generated the release of the second kind of energy of the same first level from the atom. That is, in this case, electrical energy.
Are magnetism and electricity different energies?
They're level 1 energies, but they're different kinds.
Why does an electric current start to be produced when a magnet dynamically acts on a coil? What is the mechanism of this?
What you call electric current, we call radiation or energy flow of the first level. I know that in your science, the carrier of electricity and magnetism is the electron. In our language, electricity and magnetic field are separated. That is, for particles of energies of magnetism and particles of energies of electricity have different names in our language.
We have differences here. We kind of combine these processes. From the point of view of your science, why is the flow of energy released when a magnetic field passes near a conductor? What's the mechanism?
When a magnetic field affects atoms that are carriers of all 3 energy levels, we call it pushing or knocking out energies. One energy entering a substance with a certain speed, density levels, etc., can displace those energies that were contained in the substance before the moment of impact.
It only happens in motion, so if we hold the magnet, nothing happens.
When you move, this flow intensifies. In a static state, energy is released, but your devices do not catch this flow. They have insufficient sensitivity. Magnetic energy can enter the atoms of a substance and push out of it certain kinds of energies, but at the same time, it can both remain in the substance and leave it by itself. When magnetic energy enters a substance and its sufficient charge remains in the atoms of the substance, as long as this charge remains there, the substance acquires the property of generating a magnetic field, i.e., this energy slowly leaves the magnetized substance. And from this, the effects you have named are manifested.
That is, demagnetization occurs over time. Energy gradually leaves the substance, over years, let's say.
Yes, there is less magnetic energy in this substance. With a large amount and intensive flow of magnetic energy, it is possible that the speed of vibrations of atoms in this or that substance will change towards their increase. The temperature of the substance will increase.
Does an atom have natural vibrations? Within the atomic structure, there are standing waves when vibrations are reflected from one atom to another, and the atoms are located at the nodes of the standing waves. You don't have such a model in science?
All that you have listed we call not wave packets, but manifestations of microgravity, which keeps atoms in their place, but at the same time it vibrates with a certain speed, always different, depending on what kind of substance it is and in what aggregate state it is. These vibrations of atoms we call the manifestation of the energy of the first level, but that which has not left the atom itself. This energy to maintain the aggregate state. The original source of the magnetic field is what we and you call an atom, which is a small particle of matter. We do not divide the atom into the structures that you do. Those structures that you call subatoms are different kinds of energies for us. What you call an electron is a particle of energy. You call it a particle of energy of radio waves, electricity, and magnetic field.
Does it turn out that from the position of our science, an elementary particle is inside an atom, and from the position of your science, that an atom just has different kinds of energies?
Yes.
What is the magnetic field attached to?
Magnetic field is always generated by matter, but there may be matter in an aggregate state that is not visible to your instruments. There may be matter in a state of aggregation that your instruments can't see. If there is a magnetic field or an electric field, you should always look for the source. Space itself is a carrier of substances and energies for us. The amount of energies embedded in each element is different. It depends on the type of element, on its aggregate state, what you call the speed of thermal fluctuations. And since the amount of energy is different, magnetic fields will be different in strength, in structure, in flux density, in different characteristics.
Describe the mechanism of the magnetic keeper phenomenon. What is the force that holds the bars together? It is a phenomenon when 2 iron bars are applied to each other. A conductor is placed between them in a special notch. An electric current is briefly applied to the conductor. Then the conductor is removed, and the 2 bars remain glued almost indelibly due to the magnetic field. Moreover, they remain firmly bonded for a long time.
When you see not just a manifestation of magnetic field, which you can fix with an instrument, but you see a change in the attraction of substances to each other, we are talking about changes that occurred in atoms not only on the first level, but also on the third level. In the case you described, the energy of electricity caused changes at the deeper structures of the substance of the atom, at its third level energies. The atoms took a different position in relation to each other. That is, they changed their crystal lattice and became attracted to each other in a different way. In this case, we say briefly, the energy of the first level caused the release of part of the energy of the third level, but due to the gravitational field of the planet, the energy of the third level did not leave the atoms, but simply redistributed the crystal lattice.
So the force that holds the two bars together is the internal energy of the substance.
Yes, that's what we call it. What you're asking now is used in one of our types of engines, which we call planetary engines. That is, they're used near planets. They are used to fly from the planet itself to a point in space where it is possible to turn on the gravitational engine and where the gravitational field of the planet itself will not interfere with it. This engine consists of plates rotating in different planes, consisting of a special alloy, which includes two main components, tellurium and palladium. These elements contain energies in such types and vibrations, which can, with the help of the energy coming from the engine, capture the magnetic field radiations of this or that planet and create its own magnetic field, either repelling it from the planet or attracting it.
If we want to travel within the solar system, would these engines be enough?
The maximum speed that a ship with a mass of up to 1,200 kilograms, together with its contents, can reach is 1/8 of light speed. Knowing the distance between the planets, you can calculate the travel time and understand whether such an engine will suit you or whether you will need to make gravity jumps.
Is this mechanism of travel sufficient throughout the solar system?
If you want to spend a few days traveling to a planet, that's enough. If you want to get to a planet in a few minutes, you need a gravity engine. Magnetic energies, which have already come out of atoms and formed a magnetic field, affect those energies which are in space itself. Here we come to the part that is still unknown to your science. In space, there are energies bordering between the material world and that part of the universe which we all call the spiritual world. Between the two worlds, they are next to each other. They penetrate each other, as you say, parallel. Between them, in space, there is energy which separates the material world, i.e., the world of matter and the world of energy, from the spiritual world, from its first level, which we call astral world for simplicity. In your terminology, these energies are usually called etheric. In different systems, they may be called fields, which are generated by those particles you call leptons, torsions, etc. These are all different names for the same thing, the spatial energies that separate the material world from the spiritual world. In our terminology, this energy is usually called free vacuum energy. Why do we call it exactly free vacuum energy? In translation to your language, because we emphasize by this name, the fact that it can exist in absolute, I mean the absence of any substances or energies in this space. And why free? Because in our understanding, this energy arises independently. It is there, but with the help of special methods of influence on it, it can be extracted from vacuum and used.
Transform it into electricity, for example, right?
Not just electricity, in energy of any practical level, even gravity.
That is, there is a principle common to the universe. One type of energy can always be transformed into another.
Yes, subject to the law of conservation of energy.
So it turns out that magnetic force lines are a manifestation of these layers between the subtle material worlds and our dense material world.
Magnetic field coming out of the substance, that is, these energies of the first level which I spoke about, coming out of the space into the absolute vacuum, can, at a sufficiently intensive flow of time of influence, force of radiation, influence also the energies which you call ether. But this requires isolation from the substances and fields of the material world, all but the influencing energy. Simply speaking, such experiments should be conducted far away from the planet in outer space, where there is no gravitational strong influence of other celestial bodies, and accordingly, that there should be as little stardust and interstellar gas as possible.
If we can influence the free energy of vacuum with magnetic energy, it turns out that we can extract energy from it with the help of certain competently organized magnetic interactions.
Not only magnetic interactions, it is possible to influence with electricity different types of energy called radio waves.
But you have to understand what you are doing, how to organize these processes.
Yes, it is necessary to understand the conditions for creating such a flow, to what place of space and how exactly to direct it, what kind of magnetic field to isolate this space, so that the energy is not scattered but is directed in a beam to this or that place of space.
We are probably still far away. Our civilization does not have such knowledge to influence competently.
To conduct such experiments, you need to move at least 100,000 kilometers away from your planet with your mass and gravitational constant.
You mean it's impossible to extract this free energy within the planet?
You simply cannot isolate yourself from the Earth's gravitational field.
Is it kind of a hindering factor?
It will trap free energy. There's free energy on Earth. It is in any cubic millimeter of space, but it is restrained there by the same gravitational field.
So it's a lot easier to do it in space.
Yeah, that would be easier.
How to extract energy from magnets?
What level?
Well, to get electricity, let's say.
In the form of a field.
Yes, in the form of an electric field, which can be used for domestic purposes, exploited.
That substance, which you call a magnet, also contains electric energy. When different types of electric or magnetic energy are applied to it, both electric field and magnetic field can occur, and most often it will be a mixed field, what you call an electromagnetic field. You just don't separate it, and we have different words for the names of these fields and for the names of the very small portions of energy that it forms, as I said. So any substance, what you call atoms, it contains all the energies. With a certain influence on them, you can extract each of them.
But the law of conservation of energy will always be observed.
Yes. The law of conservation of energy is invariably observed throughout the universe, for in the material world it is the basis for sustaining its existence.
I understand that in our science there is a misconception that our science represents energy as something separate from the universe. Although in the universe there is a constant transformation of one kind of energy into another, and we are a little bit away from it. We do not understand these processes, so it's difficult for us.
The point is that in our science there is no separation in our understanding of the material world from the spiritual being that generates it.
That is, it is all interconnected. The universe, layers of space.
Yes, and they are interconnected, first of all, not through energies of different levels, but through the spirit itself.
What are permanent magnets? Self-rotating?
What do you call a permanent magnet?
It means how we have, let's say, some magnet made of rare earth elements. That is an ordinary one, which has two poles, and we create some geometrical construction which would self-rotate in space. Is it possible to do this by interacting with some external fields?
Any magnetic field affects the surrounding atoms and the surrounding energies surrounding it, including the gravitational field.
I would reformulate a little bit. Probably you know that we have motors. Maybe you have motors too, when there's a rotating rotor and a stationary starter. If we place somehow magnets of a certain geometric shape on the starter and the rotor, can we make the rotor rotate continuously without stopping, so that the interaction between the rotor and the starter magnetic field is in such a way that it's a non-stop rotation?
In order for there to be a non-stop rotation, there must be a constant supply of energy. But in any substance of which the magnet will be composed, in this case, which will be the source of the magnetic field, the amount of energy is limited by the amount of substance it contains.
So it can't be created?
Only if you provide an inflow of energy from the outside, another level or another kind of energy of the same level.
And the magnet itself, if we take an ordinary magnet made of neodymium, for example, metal, it does not provide the inflow of energy from the outside. It's just some kind of a closed system, right?
Any magnet radiates from itself the energy contained in its atoms.
Ah, that's the internal energy of matter, it turns out.
Yes.
Does ball lightning have its own magnetic field?
Yes, it does.
How do magnetic fields affect the human body?
The human body, as a carrier of material substance, also has its own electromagnetic field. Influence on it by an external magnetic field is possible if it is powerful enough and has special wave, what you call vibration characteristics of this magnetic field. penetrating into the matter that makes up your body, into its protein structures that make up your tissues, your organs. It can change the ratio of energy in these atoms, and naturally it can affect the metabolism in one direction or another, speed them up, slow them down, affecting the organs that secrete those substances that you call hormones. So such influence, both positive and negative, is quite possible.
Does the magnetic field of planets have more negative or positive influence on a living organism?
Any organism that lives on this or that planet is initially evolutionarily adapted to its magnetic field. Genetic predisposition to magnetic field is transmitted from generation to generation among the inhabitants of this or that planet.
And if this organism is temporarily moved to another planet, it can experience ill health because of a different magnetic field, right?
This requires a rather long time for this organism to stay on another planet. Adaptation capabilities of physical bodies of humanoids are high enough, and they have time to adapt by changing external secretory activity, hormonal and nervous system, and they manage to adapt quickly and completely enough to the magnetic field of this or that planet. Though depending on the amount of vital force in this or that organism, its spirits, its nervous system will depend on how it will endure it.
So there's a lot of factors, a whole spectrum.
So many factors.
Is it possible to correct human health with the help of magnetic fields?
The life force in the human body flows through special channels. It shows a grid of some kind. You call it in your language the etheric body. It is not only an electromagnetic field, it is an aggregate of electromagnetic fields of all atoms of the physical body, and a special kind of energy that only a living organism has, which we call life force. You accordingly call it prana. Magnetic field can influence the intensity of the flow in the etheric body in the direction of its increase. If you direct the intense flow of the magnetic field to one or another place of the physical body, on which the points connected with the etheric channels come out. But usually this influence does not last long. It stops at the moment when the external magnetic field is removed.
So it's short-term stimulation?
You could say that.
Is it possible to influence the work of energy centers in this way?
What you call chakras, what is manifested on the physical level, are energy centers of etheric energy. And the same is the case with etheric channels, i.e., to increase the intensity of work of chakras, i.e., their rotation and intensity, and the processing of energies of different energies. It is possible with the help of electric or magnetic field, but again, this influence will be short-term and will gradually disappear after the external field is removed.
What is the flea wall or the neutral zone between the poles of magnets?
We do not divide this substance, this material body that emits magnetic field. We do not divide it into different zones.
So you have no concept of North Pole, South Pole?
No.
And from your point of view, is it some kind of energy vortex?
It is a vortex. If the magnetic field has left the limits of the substance, it can be recognized by our instrument if it is a small magnetic field as a mini vortex. For us, it does not have, as for you, a positive or negative charge because it is one energy for us.
And if we look from our point of view, we have a North and South Pole, and from your point of view, it turns out that these are vortices? Just multi-directional currents?
Yeah, pointing in different directions in space.
So these vortices form such a closed system?
It still affects other structures that are nearby.
I mean, structurally, are these two vortices connected in some way?
They influence each other.
So you have no concept of a neutral zone between these vortices?
These are things we don't consider.
So they don't make any serious sense?
We consider them irrelevant in the creation of the magnetic field.
Magnets have a second magnetic field.
What is longitudinal magnetic interaction?
The scalar field, he said, manifests itself at the point where the normal magnetic fields are mutually compensated. That is, when we put two magnets together, then in the place where they are put together, a supposedly second field appears, which is not detected by our instruments. It also has a magnetic property. So you haven't encountered such a thing, have you?
If it's not detected by your instruments, how did your physicist detect it?
And he was stacking geometrically different magnetic shapes. And so it turns out that unless you stack this magnet in a certain design structure, you don't get that scalar field. And if you put it together, then you get this repulsion and repulsion, something that should not happen.
What difference did he see between a scalar field and an ordinary magnetic field?
Well, one of the properties he describes is that it's many times weaker than a normal field.
If he had no instruments to detect it, how could he know if it was weaker or stronger?
Well, those are his hypotheses, but you've never encountered such a phenomenon that there's some kind of second field?
The thing is that the magnetic field has different inhomogeneities in its composition. They can be called subfields, scalar field, and supermagnetic field. We simply do not separate them. For us, it is unified.
So in your concept, it is some kind of a consequence of manifestation of magnetic field in different formations.
Yes, these are inhomogeneities in the magnetic field. The gravitational field has its own inhomogeneities.
And depending on that, on the inhomogeneities, there are certain effects that can be picked up.
Yes, it's one of the manifestations.
So the man was in a hurry to discover a certain second field?
The point is that one can make an assumption about whether the main thing is weaker or stronger, but without measuring it with instruments, one cannot find confirmation of this assumption.
What is the magnetocaloric effect?
This is exactly the effect I mentioned earlier. Exposure of atoms to magnetic energy causes an acceleration of their internal vibrations, what I call heat.
Accordingly, the vibrations increase and heat is generated.
Accordingly, the vibrations increase, and you measure that the object has increased its temperature. What you call temperature, we call the amount of first-level internal energy that has been released to the external environment, thermal energy.
So it's a substitution. Magnetic field replaces energy and free thermal energy begins to be released. From your science.
You could say that.
Is it possible to reconstruct the magnetic field of Mars?
Every planet has its own magnetic field, including Mercury, Venus, the Moon, Mars, Earth.
Is it believed that Mars has a disturbed magnetic field?
It naturally differs in power, but it depends on the density and composition of the atmosphere because what you call photons that come from the sun and collide with those particles that are in the atmosphere of Mars with those atoms, since the density of the atmosphere of Mars is lower than on Earth, the number of collisions of photons with these atoms is less, and accordingly, the generated magnetic field is also less.
So the atmospheric factor is still present then?
Yes.
And if there are technical possibilities and motivation to restore Mars for living, the atmosphere of Mars, then in principle it can be done.
With the technology of the Interstellar Alliance, it is possible to rebuild Mars, but it requires a process that in your language is called terraforming. It takes the usual resources, energy, and material. The resource of workers takes quite a bit.
How long does it take to restore Mars to the same level as Earth? Same nature, same atmosphere. Is that a long time?
To restore the atmosphere, to recreate what you call the biosphere, that is, certain plants, microorganisms that will further support this atmosphere, and to slightly change the orbit so that there is not such a temperature difference, and to slightly move away two of its satellites, which will pull the atmosphere. Personally, I would give about 300 Earth years.
What do you think about the use of super strong magnetic fields to protect against cosmic radiation?
Our specialists who work in space, in open space, or on ships, those who move in space themselves or work with contactees, including those from your planet and many others, who have to be constantly in space, practically do not use exactly magnetic fields for protection from cosmic energy, because we believe that the fields created by energies of the first level are ineffective and very energy-consuming to protect from the energy of the second level, which is radiation. For this purpose, we use a special device that collects cosmic radiation into a special accumulator and converts it into electricity. So we achieve two goals. We protect our crew and contactees, to whom we show different planets from damage by radioactive energy, and at the same time, we accumulate energy for our engines.
I've heard of this technology before, by the way. Very interesting. It turns out you kill several birds with one stone.
We find it most effective.
Is it possible to teleport using magnetic fields?
The effect of teleportation is not related to magnetic fields, but to interdimensional energy, what you call ether and torsion field, and we call vacuum-free energy. It is found not only in the vacuum, but in any space. Every substance is made up of certain energies. In certain conditions, with the help of the same free energy of vacuum, it is possible to translate the substances of a dense material body into a wave structure, which can be moved in a device to any distance. In order to do experiments of this scale and level, it is necessary to understand exactly what you are doing and why you are doing it, otherwise negative consequences for space for substances surrounding.
There is such information that there used to be teleportation gates to other planets on Earth. Is it true?
Previously, there were.
Some kind of energy stored in crystals? The crystals were standing, they say?
There were different principles.
Why does a strong impact on a magnet cause it to demagnetize?
If we look at the energetic level, a magnet is an accumulation of energies in a dense material state. If it has magnetic energy that has been embedded in it, it has a magnetic field. Impact is the impact of another dense material object. At the moment of contact, a wave travels through the object that has been struck. From the applied mechanical energy, the magnetic energy will leave the object.
Is one energy pushing out another?
Yes,
Why can some substances be magnetized and others not?
those substances which can be magnetized contain those elements, internal energy of the first, second, third level, which allow to accumulate exactly magnetic energy, magnetic field. And those substances with which it is impossible to do it, their structure of atoms and crystal lattices do not allow to do it. They have nowhere to accumulate magnetic energy. The same substances, but in different isotopes and aggregate states, can emit and accumulate different kinds of energies.